All right, let's dive right in. So this is going to be a talk on TailwindCSS. And TailwindCSS is a front-end framework. If you've used Bootstrap or Bulma, it is a similar yet completely different concept. And it is kind of a hot thing. It's been developed by 5 guys who are kind of big in the Laravel community, but namely Adam Wathan is the name that people know best from his testing videos and some other stuff. I know a lot of people like myself have kind of sniffed around at it and looked at it, weren't sure what to do about it with it. So I put together this demo of like how to install it on the Laravel project, how to get up and running with it real quick, and all that stuff.
Peter,
so,
excuse me, is this going to be a live demo or is this more
yes.
of a presentation? Live demo. Okay.
I've got a few slides just to run through real quick, but they're
okay.
Live, and then I'm going to be doing live coding. And
okay.
Stuff, so, yeah. So this is a little bit about me, my Twitter, I've heard about it, my GitHub, Peter DKC. I did do a Laravel package called Sprocket, which helps you to set up very quickly a local MySQL development database for Laravel projects, and currently in LinkedIn. So the 3 most popular CSS frameworks that we all hear about in connection with Laravel projects are, of course, Bulma, Bootstrap, and TailwindCSS. And this chart lays out, kind of my opinion, verified by Mike Bautista, of the differences between these things. So Bulma and Bootstrap are well known for having very low upfront investment as far as setup and getting up and running, putting something in a site, component or element stuff, whatever it is. As far as customization goes, there's a little bit more to do with Tailwind. So there's a few more steps that you got to jump through and whatever. But I would say overall, it's not that much more than getting Bulma up. As far as customizing, Bootstrap can be kind of middle of the road, depending on how much you're doing with it. You can use swatches and stuff, themes, whatever. Bulma, there's some variables and stuff you can set, but as far as making Bulma look different than base Bulma, it's really difficult to do anything consistent. And then long-term investment, again, I would say middle of the road for both of those. As you work with Tailwind through the life of a project, I think number one, the customization, there is no customization cost. You are customizing from the moment you start putting styles on the site. And then as time goes by, the investment cost gets very small because you're able to write dry stuff that is repeatable throughout your site. You can build your own elements and components and then use those wherever you want. So there's just a little bit of like comparison. You might consider Tailwind if you feel constrained. If you like something that doesn't just give you, here's a card, this is how you put an image in it, have a nice day. That's all we're going to use. This is the way your site is going to look. These things are always going to have shadows. These things are always going to have rounded corners, and good luck trying. If you'd like consistency and dryness across your site when you're writing your own styles that are custom to your application, it gives you very easy. You got to tinker a little bit up front, but then once you've got stuff set up, you can organize to your OCD's heart content. And then if you don't, again, that Bulma Bootstrap, this is the way it is thing. If you have something very specific, Tailwind can do whatever you want, however you want to do it, and it'll be perfectly happy with it.
Peter, I'm sorry, dryness.
That's
I'm not familiar with that
acronym. Oh, yeah, I'll cover that in just a second.
Okay.
In the next slide. So Tailwind is not a UI kit. It has no pre-built components. It's not a theme skinner, and it is most importantly not opinionated. It doesn't impose anything upon your styles. It is fully configurable. Like all of it is fully configurable. And you can rapidly assemble stuff out of basic CSS Lego blocks. But like the old school Legos, the new school Legos have like, this thing looks like a tree and this thing looks like a horse and whatever. But I remember when I was a kid, it was just bricks in a box. You do whatever you do. It's just up to you. Tailwind is much more like that kind of thing. It is composable in that you can compose out of it these various Lego bricks, whatever you want. And it is dry in the software development world, standing for don't repeat yourself. So if you do something 2 or 3 times, make a thing that you don't have to keep repeating that same thing over and use that everywhere. And then you can develop a great deal of consistency to the styles of your application through using the composability and dryness. Okay, on to the demo. Here we go. I've put this up on GitHub, and it's at /PeterDKC/Tailwind-demo. If you read the Tailwind docs or even the Laravel preset for Tailwind docs, it kind of gets you a basis for things. But this is literally a step-by-step for I have a new Laravel project, and like here you go. And you'll see kind of what I've done with this thing in a minute here. Okay, so let's just look at the repo real quick. So this is it. I have a quite extensive README that is a step-by-step of all the things that you need to do. And this is all depending on the Laravel front-end preset. You can get Tailwind. In fact, the first time I used a Laravel project, I just went off their official documentation and tried to get it up and running. And there was definitely some gotchas. The preset definitely helps, but there's still a few more things you need to do other than just composer require. So I've got all this laid out. We are assuming for the scope of this conversation that you kind of understand Laravel, how to create a new Laravel project, eloquent, stuff like that. So I'm glossing past all of that information. So for raw beginners, I'm sorry. Okay.
Does everyone know what the presets are?
Probably not. Everybody not know what they are? Yeah, okay. So for the common front-end JavaScript and CSS frameworks that are out there, like Vue, jQuery, Angular, Bulma, Bootstrap, Tailwind, and some others, I'm sure. The Laravel community has put together a set of community presets so that when you say Laravel new project, you can then immediately turn around and say, now install, make stuff that'll make it like Bulma, make stuff that put Vue.js. It'll just install everything for you and give you directions for how to set something up within the structure of Laravel project. So it just shortcuts all that time of like reading the directions and saying, okay, now how does that compare to what I have in my Laravel project and how do I get it also?
It defaults to.
And it defaults
like Laravel defaults to Bootstrap, and one of this thing will strip it all out, put in whatever.
Yep. So on this demo thing, I have a master branch, and this is a trees database that's very simple. It has one database, it has one model, trees. That's what we're doing. So I have all that stuff already set up for you on the master branch when you clone it down, and you will just have trees in the database when you follow the direction. The introduction stuff, I do have a PDF version of the deck up here as well, if you care about that. And this starts out with all of this initial stuff already done. So I'll just run the seed command so you can see kind of the last step there. So once you get your Laravel project and everything set up, this is really now you're in my version of the Laravel application. I've migrated my one table here, and I've created 10 fake trees in the database. Previous talk that I did for the meetup shows you how to create this kind of stuff on your own. So if you look at laravelomaha.com, if you're wondering about how to use database seeders, I went through a whole talk. Okay, so that's where we are in the scope of our application. So now I'll just run through from there what you would do to get Tailwind up and running. So the first thing I'm going to do is check out a new branch so I don't mess up my master branch. I'm going to call it demo. And then I will just copy paste things starting right here. So the first thing we're going to do is install that Laravel front end preset. And we'll kind of give you an idea, but then I'll let Composer do its thing in the background. And these instructions are pretty much copy pasted from their GitHub repository. They have a couple of other options, like if you want pre-built auth stuff, they have a different command for that. And this does take a minute. Apologize. Composer is really slow inside right now. So now this is going to actually run the arson command for the Tailwind preset. It's scaffolded up some CSS and stuff, and then it's saying to run that, which is the next command that I have here. So npm, for those who don't know, is the node package manager, and it's the standard for everybody setting up all their front-end stuff, JavaScript, CSS, etc. So this is going to do a whole bunch of stuff because npm dependencies are really complicated. Yeah. So then Mike, actually, our last meetup did a talk on Laravel Mix. So if you're not familiar with Webpack and Mix, again, you can find stuff out there. Do we have that on YouTube?
Mhm.
I think cool. So this is again assuming that you kind of know about Mix and how it fits into a Laravel project. But basically, I'm just taking what Tailwind gives me by default after this npm run dev process, and I'm just tweaking it a little bit for a couple of things. So they've made some assumptions about what you want in your front end and how you want it to build, and I'm just saying, no, actually, I want this instead. This is taking more than a moment. They said it'll only take a moment.
Might be 2 moments.
Cool. All right, so it built and it spit out some files, JS app directory, JS stuff, app.css. So npm has taken all my resource asset raw stuff and it's built it out and packaged it for the front end. Oops, that was a mistake. Cool. So now I'm going to open Sublime and open webpack.mix.js. So we're requiring Laravel Mix like standard, but then we're doing this Tailwind thing. We're doing this Purge CSS thing. Purge CSS is basically tree shaking for any unused styles in your application. So Tailwind comes with a ton of styles out of the box, and if you don't use them in your application, this is basically throwing away the unused ones at the end of the build process to kind of shimmy down your front end. This is pretty standard, so it's taking whatever's in my assets.js app.js and any other dependent files that's dragging in and building it up to the public/JS folder. Big note here is that Tailwind uses PostCSS, and a lot of Laravel developers will be familiar with Sass and SCSS. PostCSS has some notable differences from Sass and SCSS, and some notable advantages. I'll let you research that on your own. Assume you guys have heard of those words and can look it up if you want. In practice, it doesn't make a big deal of difference to how you work every day. It's kind of the same concepts, but note that the main app file does end with .css and not like .sass. Then it's going to run the webpack tailwind commands, it's going to purge CSS, and we're just going to replace this last part. So we're going to tell it, or we're going to replace this last part. We're going to tell it that we always want a version. Their default says only version for production. And we're just going to tell it just version all the time. And then we're going to extract the Vue library and the Axios library from our JavaScript files to make them sort of static and always. They don't have to be sent to the user's browser as often. We don't want to be constantly sending those out. Those libraries are kind of big. So this just extracts those to their own JavaScript file. And then our application changes will be the ones that get cached and cache busted more often. So we'll save that. And then, when you do the extract thing, you will need to have 3 different JavaScript files in your application. So I've noted that here. If you don't have it, it is what the repo has already. And then we're going to include the MDI icon set in our CSS file. So we'll just paste this in at the top. And you can see that there's a bunch of Tailwind stuff that happens here. You can read their documentation to figure out what this is doing. You don't need to care about it to just get it up and running. Okay, so now we're going to actually configure Tailwind. So I said that it is completely configurable. So now we're going to see what that looks like. We're just going to make a couple of simple changes just to give you an idea of what this file looks like. So we've messed with the Webpack, which is our build file. We've messed with app.css, which is our style sheet stuff, right? So now we're going to go into tailwind.js, and this is the configuration file for everything that Tailwind does. It is a JavaScript file. It's got a bunch of comments up here, and it goes straight into a bunch of objects. So it's just one big JavaScript file of stuff to configure your application. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to say, well, I don't like the default green, so I'm just going to replace this with a whole block. All of these are different hex codes. And you can use a color picker. You can select whatever you want. If you want like a magenta section, you can do that. Like you can put whatever you want in here. It is the standard for Tailwind to have these 7 variations and from darkest to lightest for every color. You could change it to 6 if you want. You can do whatever you want. And then out of the box, the Tailwind uses orange for its default brand color. which affects the coloring a lot of things. Speaking of composability and also consistency, if you use something like brand darkest, lightest, and then halfway through your project, the customer says, you know what, I don't want that green, I want that purple. You just change your brand from green to purple. All of a sudden, all your changes are going to be made in one shot with a rebuild. So, and then you can make, you can use this same syntax to make other things that you want to make sort of composable within that same thing, same idea. So I'm just going to say, instead of orange, because this is a tree theme, I'm going to replace all of these with green, and that'll be cool. Now we're going to go and change the default padding list. So out of the box, find it, padding. So out of the box, there's a ton of options in here. I'm just giving some examples. So if you do this yourself, you can kind of read through all the stuff it does. This is the default list. It starts with this pixel declaration, and we'll see how to use these in a minute. But the default px is 1px, 0 is 0, and then it starts bumping up by 0.25 rem per integer on the left. Okay, and that usually, in my experience from trying this, just isn't quite enough like options. You usually need some more bumps there. So I've just created more of them going 0.25 rem per integer value. At the end, you can see that I've jumped up. I went to 10, and I went like 12, 16, 20, 24. You can choose whatever you want. It's completely up to you. If you need 150 for padding like declaration, put in the list. Like that's cool. The same thing for margin. Note here the gotcha that margin does have this auto at the top rather than starting with the pixel. Padding doesn't have the concept of auto, like the auto center thing in CSS, so it doesn't need it. Yeah, cool. So we've made some basic configuration changes to our application, which we could continue to do over time throughout the styling of the app, whatever. And as always, we need to run our build and make sure that it works. And hopefully I didn't screw anything up. See if we get a nice big error message here. Yay, and it did stuff. I've included the MDI stuff, and that font path that I put at the top of the CSS file tells Webpack to drag all these fonts files in and package them up with their application and send them to the browser. Doesn't have to download them from Google or whatever. And then we've done the rest of our things: JS Vendor, JS App, JS Manifest, and then our style sheet is probably in here somewhere. Oh, there it is.
Hey, Peter, is that vendor JS because you extracted view and Axios and it puts it in vendor?
Yes. So the manifest contains basically, the manifest will say, if you want view, go look in the vendor one, and if you want the application, go look. All right, so I'm going to also run, now that I've verified that it's building without errors, I'm going to run the watch command. And then any changes that I make to any of the front-end files that it's looking at for my raw ones, it'll just automatically rebuild everything and spit it back out. And then the version will bust the cache. It'll put another hash on the end of that file name. And then when I do a page refresh, there'll be no like, you changed this from red to green, but I didn't pick up the change, so I'm not going to show it to you. So, anyway, so we'll just let that watch run in the background and then do our stuff. Okay, so if we have done all this correctly, we should see a list of trees with basically browser default styles. Like Tailwind has kind of taken over and done some basic font stuff, but it is an unopinionated front-end utility framework. So it makes no other declarations about like what our sites should look like. So everything's just like black and blue and purple and whatever. Like this is what you get when you have no styles.
Is it doing resets and all that kind of stuff?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if it does any shimming or that stuff. I guess I would assume it does, but great. That's a great question, Jordan. All right, cool. So yeah. So this is a basic like CRUD thing for a list of trees. So here's our list of trees. We can add a tree. Defaults look great. They're so sexy. And then we can edit a tree, and then we can delete a tree, and that's cool. All right. So this is what we get out of the box. And basically, I've got a bunch of blade files out here, but we'll start with the layout app, and which is kind of a common Laravel convention for like headers and including your stuff. And then you extend this by doing like a blade file that extends the app layout. So you just make all your blade files extend the app layout, or you can make however many layouts you want. And then you target a section, in this case, content. This over here says yield content. Now we get, consistent front-end markup across site, all our styles included, all our cache. So this is all very sort of default Laravel stuff. So let's start up here at the top with the header. And I've just got this. I put a couple of styles in here to just get things started, but I left it mostly blank. So that like home link at the top, obviously that doesn't look great. So now we're going to actually start putting Tailwind stuff. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is to put a couple of divs here, and then just to have kind of two boxes. And then the first one, I'm just going to start adding classes. So I'm going to say that this is a this is a, I want the background to be like background brand Lightus. And then those padding things that we set up earlier, or sorry, the margin things that we set up earlier, I'm going to say I want margin on the bottom equal to the 4 interval, whatever rem value is in 4. I want that right there. I'm going to say that the whole thing, let's see, padding up and down would be the y vector. I want that to have like a padding 2. And let's just see what we've got so far. Cool. All right. And inside of that, I want to have a container class, which will give me sort of like some stuff, but not really much. But then I'm going to say in the x vector, so horizontally, give me auto margins. Cool. And then I also want that to be h-full, so that it takes up the whole width of its parent object. And that whole thing, and then I'm going to say, give me, sorry, I'm going to increase this a little bit. Okay, so now we have a nice like header bar set up, really quick and easy. And I want to fix that link in there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop an icon in here. Use an MDI icon because that's what we have. We'll make that the MDI tree. And then I need to wrap this in a span because MDI icons and non-span links kind of get messy. Cool, so we got our little tree there. That's awesome. But it doesn't look very good. So I'm going to start styling this thing. And the first thing I'm going to say is no underline. And then I want the text to be the brand color dark, probably. So let's see what that looks like. Cool. Now it's green. It's not underlined, but then it like doesn't do anything really. And it kind of looks like just a regular link. So I want to put some padding of 2 all the way around this thing. And then I'm going to start using pseudo classes on here, right in line in my styles. So I'm going to say hover. I want your BG to be brand dark, to flip that. And then I'm going to say hover text white. And in fact, I'm also going to say under regular circumstances, just to give it kind of a look, let's just do BG white. So now we're saying under normal circumstances, I want a white background, dark green text. And if I hover over you, I want you to go brand dark with white text. Awesome. So there you go. There's our button right there. It already looks 1,000 times better. And that took me maybe 90 seconds. Okay, cool. So let's jump down to our index page, and we'll start kind of cleaning up the top here. So on this trees thing, the H1, I'm going to say, let's go text brand dark. And it seems a little squeezed there. So I'm going to say, why don't you get a bottom margin of like 4? That feels pretty good. And then like maybe some padding on the left-hand side, like 4 there too, just for fun. Okay, that looks a little better and like has a little bit nicer feel to it. So then like, let's click on one of these other things. That doesn't really look the same, but I don't want to go to the create page, and I don't want to like do that for the thing. And you're going to run into this problem right away of like, don't repeat yourself. I want to use this style everywhere, but I don't have a component to do that. So instead, I'm just going to copy all of these classes. And because let's just say this is like main, let's just main heading. Does that feel good? Whatever. I'm just giving it a class for the heck of it, but you could just say H1s across the board. But so let's open up our style sheet. And obviously, under normal circumstances, you can get rid of all these comments and clean these up. I'm just going to blow through here. So for the main header, we're going to use the apply directive. We're going to paste all these classes, and then we're going to put dots in front of them, and we're going to save that. Say apply all of these classes to the main header class.
Is apply a post CSS thing or a Tailwind thing?
I think it's post CSS. Mikey, do you know specifically?
I don't know. I think I can't say for sure, but I think it is a post CSS thing.
Okay, so now I can go to my create page and say class equals main header.
Heading. Header. I love the heading. On your index, then you did heading.
Oh, did I screw up this one? Cool. All right, so there you go. So now if I go around and put that class on all my other stuff, I can do that on edit. Class equals main heading, headering. What is it? Header?
Header.
ER.
Now I'm confused. Okay, cool. And I don't think I have any other pages in the website, so that was easy. Cool. All right, so now we've got our stuff, and yeah, all the headings are going to look consistent, and we are not repeating ourselves, right? And we'll do something else cool in a minute. So now let's look at this thing that is like, let's tackle like one of these cards, right? Like that seems like a pretty good thing to do. So for this, let's say give that a border, and then we probably want padding all around of like maybe a 2 value or something like that. And we want a border like gray, dark, and then maybe we do background like gray lightest. Let's just see what this is. Okay, I kind of like that. You know, we could fix this margin thing at the top later, but that's cool. Now let's say we want more of like a Bulma look. Let's say we want like large rounded corners, and we want overall margin on the horizontal of like, again, not much, but like 2. Okay, cool. We immediately have a Bulma look, basically. Let's say we want to go even more Bulma and say, give that a box shadow. Okay, we've got a box shadow. Like, here's our card component now. And if I put this stuff in a card class, in a file somewhere, at apply, all of these things, you can quickly see that like, if you really like the convenience of the things that Bulma gives you, just build them up yourself and like make your own little Bulma framework. You can additionally do some post CSS things to like add import like button or whatever. And sorry, I can't remember the syntax off my top of my head. That's probably wrong. But basically, you can create files within your CSS directory. Let's do this in the sidebar real quick. You could just create a bunch of files in the CSS directory, import them all into your app directory, and keep all your stuff clean. Let me actually pull up a sample of one of those, just because I don't feel like taking the time to create it. Oops, public. And CSS. Cool. So this is one that I've done that is like all organized. So this is a super lightweight little CSS file. And then I have some other styles over here. And you can see one of my pet peeves about Bulma in particular is that if you want a button, you have to say class equals button space button blue. Like, I don't like saying it twice. Just let me say button blue and do whatever. So I've made a base button with hovers up here, and then my button green applies button. But now I don't need to repeat that style within the inline components of everything. So this is just a bunch of buttons, and like this did not take me long to put together. This entire file with all these little permutations took me maybe 10 minutes. And now I can just sprinkle these classes all throughout my site. And I have, delete buttons that are red and edit buttons that are green and create buttons that are blue or whatever you want. You can do it however you want. And the site that this is on, just so you can see it kind of a final product, is this one. It's for my Destiny 2 clan, don't worry about it. So this is the final thing. And you can see that like, it's sort of similar to like a Bulma thing or Bootstrap thing, but if you wanted to get this specific with how these buttons are laid out and everything, it would take you a while. Like I think you would find you would fight with the framework to try to get it to look like this.